Seiko fans are beyond passionate about dive watches, with there being an entire subculture of interest where models are given creative nicknames such as Turtle, Sumo, Monster, and Tuna. One name underneath the Seiko Prospects lineup that is defined by its distinctive characteristics is the Samurai. By the standards of Seiko professional dive watches, it is rather nascent, being just over 2 decades old, with the Samurai style being one of the most well supported by the brand commercially with a myriad of references. Despite this, the level of fascination by comparison within the watch collecting public seems to not mirror the same degree of focus internally by Seiko. Perhaps acknowledging this, Seiko recently updated the Samurai, which maintains the aggressive undertones, but has decided to shrink the case, introduce some new colors, and tone down the macho aesthetics of the design. So the question remains now, is it substantially better compared to the other Samurais, and what exactly is new? In this video, we look at 3 new references that represent this collection and share everything you need to know. So Seiko's history of dive watches is pretty well documented, dating back to the 1960s, starting with the 62 Mas, the first professional dive watch to come out of Japan and helping to set a framework for other aquatic capable watches to follow. As mentioned, we have to fast forward several decades to see the Samurai, with the first edition of the model family being released just 20 years ago in 2004. Being a product of the 21st century, the watch is a reflection of modernity by comparison to the rounded cushion cases of some of Seiko's other notable diving names. This leads to sharper case lines and more aggressive hands and markers to mirror the broader concept. Since the Seiko SKX was discontinued in 2019, the Samurai along with the Turtle are probably the 2 most frequently used design concepts among modern Seiko, not including their Luxe tier, and if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about there, I will link to my video that I recently did talking about the tiers of Seiko watches. Where it currently stands, the Samurai collection consists of several different reference styles, including the models like the SRPF03, a piece that upholds the traditional forms of the Samurai. Next is the Save the Ocean series, which are special editions tied to ocean conservation efforts, now being prominently represented by the Manta editions, which have an aggressive dial texture that show off, well, manta rays on the dial, but is done in a way that is going to be less prominent than it appears in the product photos. These Save the Ocean editions are usually cycled through over shorter periods of time, as we have covered former Save the Ocean editions such as the SRPD09 in the past. Then there is the Seiko Paddy edition, the SRPJ93, a model made in partnership with the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. And finally, the King Samurai, marked by its use of a waffle dial pattern. Across the line, you will see a mix of materials, hardlex and aluminum in some cases, sapphire and ceramic in others, with cases that are generally going to measure around 44 millimeters in diameter, making the changes on display with these new versions a significant drop in the diameter, all while incorporating several design updates throughout. The 3 models that we have here today are the SRPL11 in red, the SRPL13 with a black dial in stainless steel, and then the SRPL15 in its black hard-coated PVD case. Starting with the dimensions of this new Samurai, it comes in with a diameter of 41.7 millimeters, a thickness of 12.3 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug quoted by Seiko of 49.5 millimeters. However, when measuring with my calipers, it comes closer to 48.8 millimeters, which I find to be a much more accurate depiction of the expected wearability. The aggressive angles of the case are going to be the most prominent at the lugs and on the end links of the bracelet, with the endpoints of both of those shooting down at a dramatic angle, eliminating the fear of overhang even on smaller wrists. I would say this piece wears like a 40.5 millimeter wind strap to the wrist, and given the smaller dial opening of 31 millimeters, it creates a suitable dial to bezel ratio that makes for a watch that is one of the most wearable within the Seiko Prospects dive collection. Looking at the case, it is brushed on the anterior facing surfaces and polished on the case back. The other surface treatment of note is the knurling, which makes for easy grabbing on the screw down crown, which is unsigned by the way, and on the unidirectional 120 click bezel, which is solid with its action, though it does have some play. The insert comes in aluminum, and despite some maybe preferring ceramic, Seiko undoubtedly did an exceptional job with its presentation, with this one being blasted in its finish, all while having these recessed markings that look well above its price, and being topped off with a lume triangle pip at 12. The lugs are going to be drilled, and the spring bar sits higher than normal, as if you measured from that drilled point to the other, you get a distance of just under 42 millimeters. This makes for the articulation of that end link even more accommodating for smaller wrists, an idea that persists if you do decide to opt for swapping to a different strap, which is probably going to be likely given that these do come with a 20 millimeter lug width. The SRPL-11 and the SRPL-13 both come equipped with a 3-link bracelet, while the SRPL-15 comes with a rubber strap with matching hardware to the case with the buckle and the keeper. In the case of the pin-adjusted bracelet, it comes entirely brushed, as the aggressive angle of the end link is mirrored throughout the following center links as it tapers down gradually to 17.5 millimeters, eventually meeting at a signed stamp clasp, which is probably going to be the most pedestrian aspect of the presentation. The clasp includes a fold-over lock, dual button release, and a diver's extension that can be accessed without tools. Where tools will be necessary are with the 4 points of micro adjustment within the clasp. The rubber strap is a nice pairing on the SRPL-15, and it teases at what these watches are capable of if you do decide to experiment with a variety of different combinations. Giving us a view of these dials is a lifted, flat Hardlex crystal with a starkly cut facet at its circumference. The use of Hardlex is a bit of a head scratcher in this instance more than in other times, as the crystal is not heavily domed, which will bring forth benefits in avoiding the sapphire route, especially for visibility, but given the amount of samurais that you can get with sapphire crystals and proving out that Seiko can do it for this price, it does make for a confusing use of the material type in this instance. Now shifting to the dials, we have a formula that is still very much true to the samurai design language, although it has been modified to some degree. Some are very quick to call out that this watch takes on some of the dial choices of the Shogun with its slimmed down markings and hands, especially when opposing them to the broader approaches of the conventional samurai. The dials follow a traditional layout though, with a matte colored backdrop, with the red unquestionably being the conversation starter of the three. The dial is set at the perimeter with square markings for the every 5 minutes and linear markings representing the timing increments in between. One of the most notable aspects of toning down the aggression that I've been referring to throughout this video is with the slimmer raised hour markers that are pointed at their centermost point apart from the large 12 o'clock marker. Each marker comes with a steel frame and gives structure to the Lumibright portion in the middle and shines outstandingly in practice. Nestled at the 430 is a rounded date aperture that shows a black date wheel with white text across the 3 versions. The position and size are going to both be questionable, as the legibility is a far departure from the Cyclops of other samurai pieces. At 12 o'clock is the printed Seiko logo with the writing of prospect and automatic 200-meter text mirroring the opposite end at 6 o'clock. At dial center is the most visually noticeable difference to the redefined samurai here, with the hands coming in a slimmer pointed sword style, with all the hands containing lume within them, including the smaller pointed second hand. The hour hand has undergone the most reimagining, taking on the appearance of a flint spearhead, which I personally like much more than the enormous hour hand of the other samurais in the past. No matter the price, one aspect of Seiko that you have to give them credit for is their vertically integrated manufacturing process. Unlike Swiss brands of a similar or even greater price, Seiko had to establish and sustain independence, as the number of watchmaking specialists and manufacturers are nowhere near that of Switzerland. At the core of this premise is Seiko's many in-house movements, with the choice here being one of the most venerable of all, the 4R35. The 4R35 was first released in 2011, as it now has replaced essentially all but the last few remaining remnants of the 7S26. The 4R35 has become one of the most proven movements in all of watchmaking, operating at a rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour, or 3 Hz, enables hand winding and hacking, unlike the 7S26, and delivers an approximate power reserve of 41 hours when fully wound. Seiko quotes a range of accepted accuracy for the 4R35 at plus 45 seconds to minus 35 seconds a day. However, they typically will outperform this metric. When testing these 3 different versions, they ran at the following across 5 positions. The red SRP-L11 ran at plus 2 to plus 12 seconds per day. The black SRP-L13 ran at plus 2 to plus 9 seconds a day. And the SRP-L15 ran at plus 5 to plus 11 seconds per day. So pretty good performance across these pieces compared to the quoted acceptable range. Now the Samurai, despite being an important commercial product line for Seiko, it's probably going to be fair to say it doesn't have the same level of lore as other bestsellers like the Turtle, and even probably falls short in the enthusiast allure department to weirder cult picks like the Tuna or the Arnie. That said, I've always been a fan of the Samurai though. Its harsh lines and angles tease a common attribute of Japanese design we often will see, finding this balance of marrying light and shadow. This can be seen at different levels of Seiko's lineup and is even a big part of the design language of Japan more broadly. Even as a younger kid, I remember falling in love with the imposing sharp angles of the Nissan GTR. The Samurai silhouette may not be the oldest Seiko dive watch of the bunch, but it is just as distinctive as any. As for this new version, there are aspects that I like and I dislike. My biggest issues with this piece are the clasp and the use of hardlex. And I'm not the type of person that tends to overreact every single time Seiko uses hardlex, as hardlex has benefits many don't acknowledge. Hardlex manages to create a better view of the dial than some inexpensive sapphire crystals, and hardlex tends to be better at eliminating distortion, all while having less of a cold appearance than its more scratch-resistant counterpart. That said, what is frustrating is Seiko's lack of consistency in the material choice around this $575 at retail. They have shown that they've been able to execute an attractive end result using sapphire around this price, and these are not matching the doming of pieces like the cocktail times, which makes the use of hardlex more understandable. These could be drawbacks that might be deal breakers for some, but for others, they might not be. And the fact that these drawbacks can be considered deal breakers for some is ultimately a shame, because I think these look fantastic on the wrist, their wearability is amazing, and these might be some of my favorite looking dive watches Seiko currently makes. But all right, guys, that is my take looking at these new Seiko Samurais. Have you had an opportunity to see these watches in person yet? Do you own one of these watches? Love to see some comments down below, especially because these are relatively new. Also, if you did enjoy the video, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. All of that really does help out the channel. Also, if you are in the market for these watches, as well as many other watches from Seiko, we are an authorized dealer, as well as 35 other brands on our website. So if you are in the market, we'd absolutely love to have your business. Every purchase from TeddyBaldestar.com comes with a full factory warranty, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and also is a great way to support the content, allowing us to keep doing what we're doing here. But all right, guys, that's all we have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.